and the work that's been done. So I would like to request Izumi to stand up, Dr. Govind, and I can't see Craig, wherever Craig is. Craig is over there. Izumi is there. Big hand to you guys and to the whole community. So, you know, we had plans to do a lot more theatrics here, but that has been put down to the opening ceremony. So we'll have more celebration around the transition at the opening social. And you'll get to hear a lot of details about the post-transition stuff in our INA session today. So please join both the sessions and the opening. And you know, we'll have to make this work, right? Now that we've fought for 20 years to get this, we can't really let it go or, you know, slide down the hole. So it's very important for us. Now, before I finish off, all of you probably are aware that APNIC did its biannual survey a couple of months ago. The survey results were presented to the Executive Council yesterday, and we're going to release a draft report today. There is a session on the surveys as well in the agenda during the week where the survey results will be discussed. Feel free to download a copy from our website and, you know, read through it. Right now, we are releasing the draft report. More, you know, final report will be probably released in due course. But thank you for everyone who participated in the survey. It is one of the ways in which the Executive Council gets feedback from our membership and stakeholder about the future direction and, you know, requirements of our community. So having said that, and given a long speech today, I officially open the APNIC42 meeting open now. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gaurab, for opening the APNIC42 session. Now I'd like to invite our local host. As you can see the sponsors list on my side here. Sri Lanka CERT is the local host for this conference, and with pleasure I would like to invite Mr. Lal Diaz, the CEO of Sri Lanka CERT, for his welcome remarks.
Thank you, Sunny. Honorable Ministers, distinguished guests, speakers, participants, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Sri Lanka CERT, and as the local host, I would like to warmly welcome all delegates, speakers, and participants to this APNIC42 conference, and to extend an equally warm welcome to our little paradise island of Sri Lanka. We are obviously very excited to host the APNIC conference for the first time in Sri Lanka. Today, we have, I think, over 300 participants when you take all the workshops and the conferences together. We have industry experts, professionals from across the Asia-Pacific region, making this conference a truly international one. So, ladies and gentlemen, while the internet usage has been increasing exponentially, the community at large is also facing many challenges, from network design to prevention from cyber attacks, to challenges faced in IP resource management and planning, as well as you all know, IPv6 is running out of address space. IPv4, I'm sorry, should have said that. So we want this conference to be recognized as the platform where experts and professionals from the internet community come together to share technology and practical know-how, and to openly debate on policies and best practices for individual operators as well as for the community at large. We're optimistic that all participants will acquire new skills and knowledge from this conference, and I would encourage everyone to play an active role in these interesting discussions in order to be able to establish sustainable policies for the region. In closing, I would like to thank the event management team of APNIC, Blondine and her team, and also my colleagues at Sri Lanka CERT for their diligent work, particularly behind the scenes. And in this context, we appreciate the presence of Honorable Minister Iran Wickramaratne, one of the pioneers behind the East Sri Lanka Development Initiative that adopted several measures which included the setting up of our national CERT, which was Sri Lanka CERT. My special thanks also go out to delegates from government and of Sri Lanka, the Ministry of Telecommunications and Digital Infrastructure, and all the sponsors, both local and foreign, for their great support to make this event possible. I wish all delegates and participants a fruitful conference and an enjoyable stay in Sri Lanka. Thank you.
Thank you, Lal. Now I'd like to invite the Honorable Minister of State and Enterprises and Entrepreneurship, Mr. Aaron Vikramaratne, for his speech. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Honorable Hasanul Hakim, Minister of Information, Bangladesh. Mr. Hakim, President of the Internet Service Providers Association. My colleagues from Sri Lanka, ICT Agency Chairperson Chitra Gadi Mubarak, CEO of CERT Lal Dias, Jayanta Fernando, Dr. Ajit, and also Paul Wilson, the DG of APNIC, distinguished guests. Now, first of all, it gives me great pleasure to be present here today at this APNIC42 conference. On behalf of the government of Sri Lanka, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you who are visiting our country at this time. I would like to express my sincere appreciation to APNIC and Sri Lanka CERT for organizing this conference to explore business opportunities, sharing knowledge and experiences, which will be contributed by experts and professionals from different parts of the world. One of the most significant developments, obviously, of this century is the Internet. The concept was introduced many decades ago, and I remember in 1984 coming out of university and going to work in a US multinational corporation, becoming one of the probably first email users. It was not called email then. It was called by the name of the corporation. It is up to the technology community to nurture this wonderful tool for the better interest of the world at large. Internet penetration will exceed 2 billion and mobiles 5 billion, or in that range. The majority is going to be in our region. So IPv4 addresses on the brink of exhaustion of all its available space. The Asia-Pacific region is very fast growing. This market growth is also an opportunity for technology-based businesses. In the case of Sri Lanka, the internet offers an essential tool for overcoming barriers to social and economic integration. It also plays a fundamental role in developing our country. It brings information, education, health, even to people in distant parts of this island. In response, Sri Lanka has adopted an ICT policy that meets the Millennium Development Goals. The key policies are to address social, economic development by encouraging public and private investment in the sector and effectively deliver better public services. Internet growth in Sri Lanka is strong. It will continue to grow. This will be a key factor to accelerate Sri Lanka's integration also into the region. The future of Internet IPv4 addresses exhaustion issues have been on the agenda for a number of years, and this conference is probably proactively working to address this issue, the exhaustion issue, to minimize the problems and to prepare the transition for IPv6. Technology is changing, and the way we live and work. the Internet of Things, IoT, is just one good example. Connected and supported by a global cyber infrastructure, technology will come and go while some become obsolete. Innovation has been part of human existence. The future of this cyber community will depend on strengthening strategy and partnership with Internet partners to serve a purpose which should be broader than a simple growth of our economy. It should assist us in our efforts to build a healthier, cleaner society with more social justice, where people will be happy and content. A quick word on Sri Lanka. CERT, it's one of our key institutional arrangements designed and created for the implementation of the phase of the East Sri Lanka Development Program initiated by the ICT agency. On a personal note, I remember the then Minister Morogoda, Prime Minister Wickramasinghe, commissioning me and others like Professor Rohan Samarajiva, who will be one of the keynote speakers today, to give leadership to those initiatives nearly 15 years ago. During the preparation of the East Sri Lanka, it was felt that strategies for ICT adoption in the country would not be successful unless it was done by proper multi-stakeholder engagement, planning, and coordination. Further, it was also felt that cyber security aspects should be addressed to ensure protection of critical information infrastructure, because substantial investments are made in ICT in all sectors. We are happy that on all fronts, Sri Lanka CERT has proven itself with its excellent track record, engaging local as well as foreign stakeholders like APNIC in an excellent manner. APNIC is also being held, this conference, as was mentioned by your president today, at a very critical time, and 1st October 2016 is a significant moment, and this is probably the first gathering, international gathering, after this historic day where the US government ended its formal oversight role of the Internet, handing over management and online address system to ICANN. Therefore, now you have new responsibilities in self-regulating. Engineers, academics, business, non-government, and government groups had paved the way for APNIC and its stakeholders to play a key role. This is indeed a historic milestone and achievements for a multi-stakeholder-led model of governance, which Sri Lanka has supported consistently over the years. October 1st is also significant for another reason. It was International Children's Day. Now, I noticed on your program, the subjects that were being covered were internet security, the latest in internet infrastructure and technologies and operations, and women in ICT. I think it's going to be very interesting, and if I had the time, I would have certainly liked to have engaged to find out what actually the content was going to be, particularly in women in ICT. But how about children and the internet? October 1st prompts me to put this on the table. I participated in a student walk on October 1st, creating awareness on the protection of children against child abuse. When we were children, I remember the television being introduced to Sri Lanka. And one of the debates I remember my mother engaged in was wondering whether this is a good invention or not. She was trying to protect her teenage son from getting into or seeing, kissing, hugging on the screen and exploring a new world and sex. Now today, we have the internet. It's not, some of you may not be able to relate to the introduction of television, but I'm drawing the parallel here. Today it's the internet. It's not on the family screen at home, but it's in the child's pocket. The access to pornography and other socially and morally undesirable material. We have to young children, my wife and I, and we had the internet in a public space. But it does not work well if dad and mom are accessing the internet in the private space. Technology advances. It is morally neutral. We all need it for progress. But as in many good things, it can be destructive if not regulated properly. We live in a fast liberalizing world. I consider myself liberal in many ways, but children have to be protected, while adults may choose the path of progress or destruction. Therefore, I urge you to pay attention, not just to the technological aspects of advancement for children, but the protection of children. Please allow me to wish you all the very best during this conference and your successful deliberations, and also a safe, happy, and memorable stay in our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for your time this morning and for speaking to us. Thank you very much. I believe this is the first APNIC conference where we have two ministers from two different countries, actually. So I would like to now invite the Honorable Minister, Mr. Inu, Minister of Information, Government of Peoples of Republic of Bangladesh. Thank you, Mr. Inu.
Well, good morning to you all. Assalamu alaikum. Mr. Gaurab Upadhaya is in the chair, and with us in the morning is Honorable Minister, Mr. Iran, Paul Wilson, Lal Dias, Mr. Hakim, and of course Professor Rohan, very old friend of mine, and Mr. Zaid Ali Khan. Well, greetings from Bangladesh, greetings from our Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Unfortunately, the APNIC42 shifted to Colombo because of a terrorist attack in capital Dhaka at the Holy Artisan Bakery on 1st of July. But we do hope that we'll be hosting APNIC meeting in Dhaka very shortly. But now everything is under control, and the England cricket team is in Dhaka. They will be playing 3 tests and 3 ODI. So everything is in control. Thank you very much. But it is a pleasure to be in Colombo. So I got a chance to travel to Colombo, look at the Sri Lankan people. So thanks for inviting me to this conference. Well, I come from Dhaka, ranking 3rd in freelance IT and IT-enabled services outsourcing globally, with over 133 million mobile users, over 54 million net users, and over 14 million Facebook users. Bangladesh is moving ahead. We have 25,000 government portals already active and engaging with the people. But in spite of all these things, Bangladesh is still lagging behind. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am among participants from the technical, operational, business and policy-making internet communities. And the participant during this conference will engage with world-leading internet and ICT professionals, discuss real-world IPv6 deployment efforts and cyber security issues, and some other related issues. I know that there are a lot of transfers of Internet Protocol version 4 addresses blocks from 103/8 happening both within the APNIC region and among RIRS. Well, IPv6 provides more than 340 trillion IP addresses, which helps that to grow indefinitely. IPv6 is the future of internet. Without it, we can no longer grow. So this is very important. Well, policies are to be drawn and reviewed for the responsible management of global internet, number resources in Asia Pacific region. Accuracy of routing data is also important. So the impartiality of the APNIC is definitely needed. So ensuring data security during the migration is a challenge but achievable. A strategy needed so that both IPv4 and IPv6 can both coexist without breaking the internet. Ladies and gentlemen, net is a tool to change the economic map of the world. Net is like breath. You breathe in and breathe out. It is part of life. Absorb oxygen, breathe out carbon dioxide. The net's technological development as well as its administration grew overall with little government regulatory intervention. It developed in a bottom-up manner, mainly by technical developers, providers, and users. And it also ensured that the network is interoperable, functional, stable, secure, efficient, as well as scalable in the long run. No single person, no single country, no single organization manages internet. Instead, the internet's technological management is headed by many entities. Most of the protocols at the core of the internet are protocols based on open standards that are efficient, trusted, and open to global implementation with little or no licensing restrictions. They are available to anyone at no cost on the internet. The open nature of the internet needs to be kept and not to be disturbed. But intergovernmental and governmental body need also to be developed on the basis of a new multilateral agreement on certain principles can be developed to keep going the functioning internet and promote solidarity and cooperation between states and underline the public value of internet beyond commercial interests. So a new way of network governance, software governance is needed along and also to find necessary parameters that ensures right to net. Ladies and gentlemen, having said that, the present scenario in the world, if we look, we see a digital economy is developing, a cyberspace is fast expanding without a proper digital infrastructure, without a proper legal regime and a proper regulatory and technical regimes. A glass house is in the making where it needs security and trust. Otherwise, the glass house will be compromised. Connection of the global north, concentration of the global north, based international e-commerce is a threat to the tax revenues of the global south. Needs to have a fair and equitable collection and distribution of tax revenues around the world. Digital marketplace globally is expanding, but without a legal regulatory framework that supports innovative and sustainable growth with an aim to harmonize national regulation versus global business objectives, cross-border trade, and keeping the internet affordable in all the markets. Well, about the connectivity, internet to the next billion and the last billion will be different from the internet to the first billion. The issue will not be primarily technical, but will be socio-political issues because it includes marginalized poor. The last billion users will use probably mainly mobiles, not computers. Now at the end of 2015, the world is still bogged down with three illiteracies: language illiteracy, information illiteracy, and ICT illiteracy. Well, the world is having still a digital divide, urban and rural divide, policy of exclusion still exists, Democracy deficit exists in the governance of internet. The climate change issues are not yet fully resolved. Affordability, accessibility is still a problem. To connect the unconnected is still a big challenge. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at a juncture of a time when the world is faced with 5 major issues: poverty, climate change, information communication technology, sustainable development, and of course terrorism. A great debate is going on throughout the world how to address these 5 issues. The emerging cyberspace is ushering a new era of development, but the cyberspace is threatened by 2 dangerous phenomena: cybercrime and terrorism, along with a tendency of militarization. To combat these 2 threats, we need 3-pronged approach: technological solution, legal framework solution, political approach. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if we want to ensure best connectivity with secure and safe internet, then other challenges we are facing are broadband expansion, content development in mother tongue, capacity to adapt to new technologies, enabling efficient human resources, migration from IPv4 to IPv6, internet governance, management of the internet economy, connecting the next billion, harmonization of ICTs with SDGs. To cope up with the situation, we need a 4-tier plan: global, national, local, and technological. We need to go way forward. We need to ensure a safe cyberspace and safe internet. And for that, we need nationally cyber security law, privacy law, intellectual property rights law, data protection law, etc., etc. But I propose to this conference that we need a cyber security treaty at the global level. And I propose for the Asia-Pacific regional legal framework on cyber security. Now, we also need to set up technological standards to ensure reliability of hardware and software, data protection during intermediary transition period of IPv4 to IPv6, and a content bank. Let us unite to ensure a safe cyberspace from terrorism and cyber criminals. Having said that, let me conclude by saying, ensure people's right to freedom of expression, right to privacy. Any restriction be according to the globally adopted and accepted principles of necessity, proportionality, and judicial oversight. So yes to human rights, no to cybercrime and terrorism. Our fate lies in our hands as we govern it. If we can rise to the occasion, we'll definitely answer the call of the future. Internet is a global common, so it is a people's agenda. We'll be successful in developing an agreed roadmap post-2015 if we can put people before power, profit, and politics. The challenge of the day is not technology or finance. The challenge of the day is to have the necessary political will. So it is a matter of political decision. Then we will, of course, connect the next billion and ensure a safe internet free from terrorist and cyber crimes. Future of the world is in our hands. Joy Bangla. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, Minister Inu, for joining us here in Colombo, in Sri Lanka. Now, I would like to invite the local host. If the conference was in Dhaka, the local host was ISPAB. So I'd like to invite Mr. Hakim, the President of Internet Association of Bangladesh.
Thank you, Sunny. Good morning. Honorable APNIC DG Chair, Mr. Gaurab, CEO of Sri Lankan CERT CC, Honorable Deputy Minister of State Enterprise and Entrepreneurship, Honorable Minister, Ministry of Information, Government of Bangladesh, Peoples of Bangladesh, APNIC DG, Mr. Paul, members of APNIC community, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to take the opportunity to greet all of you on behalf of ISPAB Association of Bangladesh and the people of Bangladesh. I congratulate Sri Lanka not only for being APNIC42, but also for being the safest country of the South Asia according to recent Gallup poll. I am really proud that Bangladesh, trailing Sri Lanka just by 1 point, is ahead of other countries like United Nations, Australia, France, Thailand, and Malaysia. You all know Bangladesh could be the host of APNIC42 meeting, and because of an unlikely incident of terrorism is shifted to Sri Lanka. We do respect the decision of APNIC and wish all the success of Sri Lankan friends. Today I am not hopeless, rather I am more optimistic than ever. I urge the APNIC community to select Bangladesh as the host nation of next APNIC conference in the Southeast Asia region. We need you to stand beside us. We need your help to spread a strong message to the terrorists that we are not afraid and divided, rather we are stronger than ever. We are united by humanity to defeat all the ill and sick forces. Honorable Minister of Bangladesh has already mentioned the strong commitment of our government to ensure optimum security for the foreign nationals and citizens. I thank APNIC community and the host Sri Lanka for inviting me and our Honorable Minister, giving me the opportunity to speak in front of you. I invite you all to visit Bangladesh. We would be honored. Thank you, and thank you APNIC again.
Thank you, Hakim, and we hope we'll be back in Bangladesh sometime in the near future. I'd like to invite our Director General of APNIC, Mr. Paul, for his closing remarks. Thank you.
Sunny. Morning, everyone. Honourable Minister Wickramaratne, Minister Inu, distinguished guests, and all members of the community, welcome to APNIC42. It's really wonderful to see you all here in Colombo. I want to acknowledge, as well as those I've mentioned, also the APNIC EC, Rajesh, Perha. We have Jessica, Cams, and Kenny here in the room as well. They're your elected representatives here for APNIC. It's very good to be here together with them. You probably know, you definitely know this event was supposed to be held in Dhaka, but we couldn't be in Bangladesh this week, and I'm still sorry about that, but I am very happy to be able to see so many of our Bangladeshi friends here. I want to thank you all, friends from Bangladesh, and especially the previous hosts, for your support and your involvement in APNIC42. So let me try some Bengali. Dhonobad Dama Priyo Bondra. That means thank you, dear friends, I hope. So we'd planned our first ever APNIC conference in Bangladesh, but instead we have our first ever APNIC conference in Sri Lanka. The Sri Lankan community also came together to host this meeting at very short notice, and they have been exceptionally welcoming and supportive. So like Gaurab, I want to thank everyone from the local community for your help, particularly Sri Lanka CERT CC, Lankacom Dialogue, ICTA, Learn, and CSSL. We really do appreciate it. I want to acknowledge a couple of old friends of APNIC, locals from Sri Lanka who are here with us as well. Professor Gihan Dias, who's an old friend and acquaintance of mine. Professor Rohan Samarajiva as well, who's come very kindly here to deliver a keynote for you this morning, which I'm really looking forward to. Thank you very much, Professor Samarajiva and Gihan. Now let me try some Sinhalese. Ayoboan, Sondera Kolamaba, Nagareta, Pemenimata, Labima Gena, Apisatudu, Wanawa. That, I hope, meant live long. It's a pleasure to be here in the beautiful city of Colombo. So sincere thanks to our other sponsors too. As you can see from the list behind me, we've had a great response from across the community, locally, globally, and we couldn't do it without these generous organisations. So what's new? Well, Gaurab covered the IANA stewardship transition already, so I won't need to dwell on that, except I do want to say thanks again very sincerely for the efforts of the APNIC community and the numbers community globally for what we've been able to achieve. As Gaurab said, for all the work and fuss about the transition, nothing will noticeably change for us. The RIRs, APNIC included, have a very straightforward, very positive operational relationship with the IANA. The new arrangements won't change that, but they will only, we know, strengthen them. The most important thing is now that the transition is complete, we can continue APNIC's work as an RIR and our collective work as a community for the best development of the internet in this region. That's important. Now, something that's going to help APNIC to do this from this week onwards is the APNIC 2016 survey, which was completed recently. In fact, the survey report was presented to us at the APNIC EC yesterday, and this afternoon it's going to be reported to you all. And also made available online, of course. So we had more than 1,200 responses to the survey, and thanks go to everyone in the community who participated in that, because the input is invaluable to APNIC. It shows us a lot. It shows us details about the support for training and technical assistance, encouraging more work by APNIC with the community of NOGs and CERTs and our region. It highlights your concerns for IPv4 exhaustion, for the IPv6 transition, of course, but this time actually the bigger issue for everyone is network security. Issues such as registry and routing security, DNSSEC, handling DDoS and other kinds of attacks, these sorts of issues which are affecting the infrastructure that we are all working together to build. There's much more to report from the survey, of course, but you can join the session this afternoon where you'll hear the formal report of the survey report itself. Just a few words about participation here at APNIC42. This year, we are really proud to welcome a record number of newcomers, 183 newcomers at this meeting, 51 of those from Sri Lanka and the rest, the other 132 from around 20 other economies. We've also had a record number of fellows who received some financial support, also courtesy of some of our sponsors, to be here with us. We've got 55 fellows actually from 18 different economies. That includes 21 women. And the fellows have come from Bangladesh, Bhutan, Cook Islands, from India, Indonesia, Mongolia, Pakistan, Nepal, Samoa, and Sri Lanka, of course, and more economies on top of that. So to be here, each fellow has worked hard. They've passed a rigorous selection process to get themselves on the list. And I know that all the fellows will return home after what I think will be a rigorous week with new experiences and skills, which will help you, the fellows, to build the internet back at home. So we were all new once, I remember. It can be overwhelming, but I hope that at APNIC42 there's a friendly, open and respectful environment, which is the norm at our conferences, and everyone has the chance to speak and contribute, and everyone's perspective is valued. So my humble advice to newcomers and fellows is to plan your conference well, to get ready for some very full days in the next 3 days, to drink lots of coffee, and please don't be shy about chatting to people you've not met before. Hopefully some of them will be friends for a long time to come. You can also participate online. This goes not only for fellows, but of course for everyone here, and those who are joining us online. You can participate online through a lot of social media and also using the APNIC42 hashtag to be part of a global conversation. So to everyone here, I really do hope you enjoy the next few days at APNIC42, that you participate, share and collaborate while you're here, but also don't stop with that, because when you get home, like the fellows, we can all continue the sharing, share the knowledge that you gain here with your colleagues, get them involved with the community, and please be ready to come back and join us again next time. So, Bahoma Stuti, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. So that's the end of the welcome remarks from the distinguished guests up on the stage. I would like to request you all, please give them a round of applause once again. Now, we have a little performance to just break out this session from the next keynotes that are going to come up to speak to us. But it's not in Sinhalese. I'm very thankful that it's written in English, so I just want to read it out. So this dance is about Pandam Palia, the mask dance in low country tradition in Sri Lanka. In the second time, named Naga Kanya entered to the dance. Finally, Naga Raksha, wow, I'm trying to learn something here, and Gurukula Raksha combined with Naga Kanya. I think I'll welcome the dancers into the room so you can enjoy the dance and interpret yourself, what they're doing actually. Please come inside. was an excellent event. Now, this dance is performed by the male dancers only, so they were all male dancers, and it was sponsored by the Sri Lanka Convention Bureau. Please give them a round of applause for entertaining us. Now we are going into the technical keynotes. The first one is from Zaid Ali Khan. He is the Senior Director of Infrastructure Engineering at LinkedIn, and he's going to be speaking to us remotely from USA of their deployment in IPv6 deployment at LinkedIn, and he's going to share with us, what was the business cases and why they deployed IPv6. I hope we can get him online. Thank you, Zaid. You're online now.
Thank you. Honorable Minister Ran Wickremesinghe, Honorable Minister Hasanul, Hakim, Chairman Gaurab, Upadhaya, and distinguished guests of APNIC42. I am honored to be invited as a keynote speaker, and as much as I would have liked to be in Colombo today, I am humbled by today's internet connectivity that can enable such real-time communication across continents. It is such strides in the stability of the internet and growth that has enabled us to realize our vision to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. LinkedIn's ultimate dream is to develop the world's first economic graph. In other words, we want to digitally map the global economy, identifying the connections between people, jobs, skills, companies, and professional knowledge, and spot in real time the trends pointing to economic opportunity. In order for LinkedIn to digitally map the global economy on the internet, we need a stable internet and an internet that can grow forever. At LinkedIn, we realized, along with the rest of the world of operators and content providers, that we are going to run out of the approximately 4 billion IPv4 addresses as our population in the world grows, and also the number of devices along with it. In the last few years, we have been tracking the heavy depletion of IPv4 addresses in all our markets and made a business decision to be part of the IPv6 transition, which would be impacted by the high number of mobile devices used to connect to LinkedIn and the performance challenges is like carrier grade NAT. I'm sure many of you are no stranger to the statistics, but RIRs like APNIC and ARIN have either exhausted their IPv4 pool or are at the very last stages of depleting their final IPv4 pool. On September 8, 2014, LinkedIn enabled its site on IPv6. A couple of years prior to that, I had assembled a team of engineers to look at enabling IPv6 across our products. To enable IPv6 at scale is a daunting task. Management and dedication from engineers, the task is less daunting and quite achievable. When my team put the plans in place, it took us 1 year to execute enabling IPv6, and we were able to accomplish this with real user testing and no data loss or corruption. All this with zero downtime to the site. Since the launch, we have seen a healthy growth of IPv6 in our network, and we are serving 10% of our global traffic via IPv6. We are seeing much higher adoption rates when we look at specific carriers, and one of the top mobile carriers in the US has over 60% of its traffic visiting LinkedIn via IPv6. Here, I'm showing a more detailed representation through a heat map on countries that have a high adoption of IPv6 from LinkedIn's perspective. The US and Western Europe have the highest adoption rate, but we are seeing Asia emerging rapidly and seeing a lot slower growth in the African continent. Now, as we look at IPv6 growth at LinkedIn, we are constantly curious as to how it is having an impact on our members. If the experience, is the experience better for them? Has it changed things or provided worse performance? So one of the things we did to gain this visibility was to enable a real-time user monitoring, user measurement technique for IPv6. We have been using a popular tool called RUM, which stands for Real User Monitoring. RUM is a lightweight beacon based measuring tool now supported across many browsers that enable you to collect navigation timers from your users' browsers. This enables you to accurately measure user experience and improve your pages as you develop them. We had been testing extensively using RUM for IPv4, so we naturally used it for IPv6. Since we're serving quite a large portion of our traffic over mobile platforms, we are in a unique position to have end-to-end visibility of how a user is performing when they visit LinkedIn sites. We can see how each object performs over IPv4 and over IPv6, and also infer where the bottlenecks are in performance. As a result, we are able to see how our member experiences are over IPv6 versus IPv4. In the next few slides, I'm going to walk you through examples of service providers and how their users are performing over IPv6 when they visit LinkedIn. Here is an example of mobile operators in France. As you can see from the graph, we have measured up to 40% page download time improvement for users visiting LinkedIn over IPv6 when they're behind the free ASN. Orange, which is a fairly major provider in France, is showing 17% page download time improvement over IPv6. This measurement is not of users behind Wi-Fi, but really behind cellular networks. In the US, we also see better performance for mobile users. As you can see, large carriers like Sprint and AT&T are showing better performance for LinkedIn members with page download times as high as 26 and 15%, much higher than IPv4. So we got quite curious as to why there was such better performances on IPv6. And we did further experimentation and analysis to look at where were the high rates of network level errors. We found that in many cases, there was a higher level of TCP timeouts in IPv4 when compared to IPv6. In this example, a particular carrier shows a 4.6% TCP timeout over IPv4 and only 1.6% TCP timeout over IPv6. That is almost 3x difference. You may think that 4.6 is a small number, but at the scale of page views we operate at, the number and impact is quite high when it comes to engagement of users. Very high TCP timeouts mean more time the application spends on the network making requests, and this directly impacts page download time that I have mentioned before. So to conclude my talk, I hope that you have all some insight into what motivated LinkedIn to move to IPv6, how long it took us to get there, as well as the impact. Most of all, I hope you all can take away that moving your infrastructure and application to IPv6 is just not something you put off to the future as a nice to have, but that there is real impact if you put it off further. To those that still haven't made plans to move to IPv6, I would say go deploy and start deploying now. It's not too late. And will benefit, and you will benefit from a competitive advantage, especially with performance at play. To those that are already rolling out IPv6, I would say keep calm and deploy IPv6 faster. I hope this time next year I will see more countries in Asia Pacific turn red in my heat map. Thank you, everyone, and I hope to see you in Sri Lanka next time.
Thanks, Zaid. Any questions for the Zaid? If you'd like to ask questions, there's microphones on each side of the aisles. Please approach the microphone, state your name and affiliation, it's optional, and then you can ask questions to the speakers. It's quite late in USA, but we really appreciate Zaid for joining us. Paul, yeah.
Hi, and thanks very much for being here so late at night for your presentation. We really appreciate it. It's Paul Wilson. I'm the head of APNIC. I noticed in your graph where you stated that approximately 10% of your traffic was coming to you via IPv6. There seemed to be a slight peak and then a drop off and then a leveling, and the numbers and the timings weren't quite clear to us here, but I'm wondering if you could say more about what was happening there with that peak and what might be behind the curves that you're showing there. Thank you very much.
Yeah, question. I had actually noted that bump in a previous presentation I gave, but somehow I didn't translate well here. We saw a bump to 13%, I think sort of in the middle of the last sort of 2-year span. And we had a hard time sort of figuring out like what it was and whether it was some particular networks. Because we found it a little bit late, we couldn't really determine, what it was, but only sort of like data that we sort of analyzed. We saw some networks doing testing, and I think it was one of the sort of fairly larger networks that come to visit LinkedIn. And so it was just a real weird bump we saw for like, like about a period of a month and a half, and it went away. So I talked to some of my peers in sort of the web scale industry. They saw something around similar to that. We all couldn't like determine what it was, but it could have been just testing in that. So from our perspective, we just saw this weird bump. I think that's sort of the best way we can explain.
One more question, okay.
Thank you, Zayat, for presentation. Actually, slides are not very clearly visible. I am Brajesh Jain from ISPAB Association of India. It was very interesting to note that you were saying that on IPv6, there is a 10% to 40% improvement in timeline. So this is a very interesting observation. And if you could elaborate a little more here, and maybe later offline, maybe we would get some more slides. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's a good question. So it's not timeline, it's what we call page download time. That means the end-to-end transaction of a user clicking on an object and getting that object that in their desktop, or in this case the mobile experience. So it's the total time it takes to download the page. So underlying what we're finding is that there is a lot of network timeout in P4 when it comes to mobile, and much higher timeout when it comes to V4, and less of a timeout when it comes to V6, which we think is the reason why V4 is showing much greater page download times, and hence you see the data in V6 as sort of much higher performance. due to that fact.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for those questions, and thank you, Zaid, for joining us remotely, and we hope to see you at a future APNIC conference. A round of applause to Zaid Ali Khan, please.
Thank you.
Now, our second keynote is a local keynote speaker from Colombo. Is Professor Rohan Samarajiva. He's the chair of LIRNEasia, which is an Asian infrastructure policy and regulation think tank. Welcome, Mr. Rohan Samarajiva.
Good afternoon. When I was thinking about a topic for a keynote, one thing one has to do is to kind of push your imagination a little, go a little broad. I know you've been dealing with a lot of technical issues, but the technical issues live in the real world of politics, economics, and strategy. So I thought I'll talk a little bit about that. I also was thinking of a way to recognize the country that lost the privilege of hosting this event, Bangladesh. So I was thinking, well, why not the Bay of Bengal, which is what links our two countries. Until the 16th century, it wasn't called the Bay of Bengal or the Golfo de Bengala. It was the Chola Sea. But since then, we have come to know it and to love it as the Bay of Bengal. And I would say, by default almost, Bangladesh has got the ownership naming rights that go with the bay. So let me talk you through a little bit of this. It's work that we have been doing with the Economic and Social Commission for the Asia Pacific since 2010. And I will end with what ISPAB is doing in this area. So this is our region. And I think our Prime Minister has been quite prescient in talking about Sri Lanka as an Indian Ocean country. So to foreground the ocean rather than the land. Not that the land is unimportant, but the ocean is quite significant, particularly to an island nation. And if you look at the world in terms of the bay, you can see that it is, I'm using very modest assumptions, taking only 50% of India's population and only 25% of China's population. And if I do that, we've got 1.3 billion people living around the bay. Using the same ratios, the combined GDP is 4.8 trillion. And this should be higher, partly because we are not fully connected. And this is why we have one of the largest concentrations of poor people in the world around the Bay of Bengal. So as you can see from this image, this is all the ocean's ships moving around. Some of these graphics are very cute. You can actually see the ships moving. But I didn't want to risk it on a presentation. You can see that the Bay of Bengal is not exactly bustling with activity. Just that line below Sri Lanka is, but not the bay itself. And in terms of telecommunications, now you say, okay, now he's finally coming to telecommunications. We like to think, particularly the internet community likes to think that the internet sort of materializes out of the sky, out of space, or from balloons. But in actual fact, the internet rides on copper, on fiber, on spectrum, the kind of things that we boring telecom guys work with all the time. So let's look at the boring infrastructure, the pipes that carry your internet and my internet. You can see again that compared to, for example, the eastern side of our continent, of Asia, you can see that the Bay of Bengal is a very quiet place, right? There are two countries here which are at present connected only by one cable. Bangladesh by one, CMAV4, and Myanmar by CMAV3, which is really old, going back to the late 90s. So the question is this adequate for our region? And I will talk a little bit about where our region is going and its prospects. So our bay, now I'm going to talk about connectivity, right? Connectivity in the old days before Samuel Morse typed out his signals. Connectivity was, well, at most birds flying around, but mostly people getting in ships, getting on horses and communicating, taking knowledge from one place to the other. So we have to talk about ships and caravans and things of that nature. Being on an island and talking about an oceanic area, I'm going to talk about ships mostly. So from 275 Christian era to about 900 Christian era, there was a lot of interactions between what is South India today, the Pallava kingdom, and Cambodia, what is Cambodia today. The Chinese scholar, the monk Fahian, I think some of you Sri Lankans may have heard the term Pahian Gala. Pahian Gala is named for the great monk. Arrived in Sri Lanka from a port near present-day Calcutta and left by sea through Java. So this was his route. Now you can see that the land connectivity and the maritime connectivity were very much integrated, and this is going to be very important as we think about the proposals made by China for a Silk Road economic belt and a maritime Silk Road, which we are deeply involved in thinking about. Now these connections went on. Around the 11th century, 12th century, we had intense communications between our country and Myanmar. And it was not just the military. We were in alliance against the Chola. So there were troops moving. We were moving rice, which is a low-value, high-volume product, which is quite unusual because that shows how sophisticated the maritime connections were. And we had monks, that is knowledge, moving. First, it went from Sri Lanka to Myanmar, and in this period, it came from Myanmar to Sri Lanka, indicating the flow of ideas. Lots and lots of shipping, I'm not going to get into it, during the British era, but everything kind of stopped after the Second World War. So one of the key things that happened after the Second World War was that the central piece of the puzzle kind of withdrew. And you can see what happens when you take Myanmar out of the picture. The integrity of the bay no longer exists. And those lines are sort of lines of communication, natural lines of communication that existed before, that will exist in the future. Now, as many of you know, Myanmar is happily rejoining the world, and perhaps as a result, connectivity is rapidly expanding. So this particular line that I'm drawing, this is not plans, these are not proposals. This is actually functioning oil and gas pipelines. And there is a port in a place called Chauk Phu in the Rakhine state in coastal Myanmar, a specialized port that allows China to move oil and gas into China, avoiding what is called the Malacca trap. Very narrow places where shipping can be constrained for natural or unnatural reasons. There are other proposals. I'm not going to go through all these proposals that are on the table. The Matarbari deep sea port in Bangladesh is going to be a critical element. The Japanese are going to be supporting that. The Kaladan multimodal transit project is essentially an Indian project to connect the Indian Northeast to the rest of India through a multimodal connectivity across Myanmar. So all these things, I'm just giving you examples. Now let's get to the other kind of connectivity, because no longer should we think about only ships. We should think about what carries today's economy, the internet, the knowledge economy. What is the connectivity that is necessary for that? You can see this is sort of, I'll go into some detail on that. These are maps developed by ESCAP. We're doing a lot of mapping, trying to get a handle of the terrestrial and the submarine cables that are needed to give our region a robust, redundant, mesh-type network where we will not be held hostage to natural calamities or to, as I said, we have unnatural calamities as well. We don't want sabotage of our connectivity on which our industries, service industries rest. So this is going to be the next connection for Myanmar, Kuakata, where CMAV5 will be linking Bangladesh and will be giving it a second connection, second submarine cable connection. And intelligently, they have done it in a different location, giving it redundancy from the current location, which is Cox's Bazar, where CMAV4 was connected. And I think our Bangladeshi friends would be unhappy if I don't say this is one of the most scenic areas and the longest sea beach in the world, perhaps, Minister. Yes. So they would like you to visit Cox's Bazar, but don't go too near the cable station. We don't like people going near our cable stations. This is going to be the new connection for Myanmar. And Wei Saung, it's again a beautiful beach. I don't know what these cable engineers do. They go and locate these things in very, very scenic locations. And that is CMAV5 again, the same cable. And AAE, Asia Africa Express 1, will be landing there. The current connection, which is the old CMAV3 cable, is in a different place in the delta called Pierpont. And Chennai, of course, the entire Indian coast. For some reason, they have thought that the only place worth connecting on the Indian side, you have West Bengal, you have Orissa, you have Karnataka, well, not Karnataka on the coast, but Andhra, etc. But they like to concentrate all their connectivity in Chennai, so you can see all the cables connecting to Chennai. Hopefully, they will also see the value of redundancy and start opening up a few more cable stations. And this is Colombo. In Colombo, we have 3 cable stations now. So we've had one for a long time. I used to lose sleep over that one, if anything happened to it, particularly in the bleak and dark times that we lived in. So we are connected to Maldives through the Diragu cable. We are connected to India through Bharat Lanka. We are connected to CMAV3, CMAV4, and CMAV5. We are not going to connect there. We are going to connect it somewhere else. BBG, which is an interesting hybrid cable, which is owned by Asiata, which is one of the companies that's sponsoring you, is a hybrid cable because people are now understanding that sea only or land only is not good. It's coming from Singapore through Malaysia to Penang and then dropping down into the sea, coming over to Sri Lanka by sea. There's no other way to come to Sri Lanka other than by sea. From Sri Lanka, it will go to Oman, and from Oman, it will become a terrestrial connection. So these are the new kinds of cables that are being driven by the connectivity thinking of the 21st century. And of course, we are very proud to have CMAV5 not on a spur, not on a branch line, but the main CMAV5 connection will be in Mathura. That means that we shave off a few milliseconds of connectivity on that cable. Those days, the cable was going in the south, and then we would have a spur coming into Colombo, but now we are the cable. And the maintenance ships that will be maintaining this cable, CMAV5, will be located in Hambantota, which would again give us, I suppose, some advantage in terms of restoration, quick restoration, if the cable goes down. So, what you have seen, remember, quite a number of these things that I talked to you about, CMAV5, AAE1, etc., have not been cut over yet. Now, AAE1 is actually quite an intriguing cable because not only AAE1, let's talk about AAE1 and CMAV5 both. Now, CMAV5 has China Mobile, the Chinese telephone companies, as partners, as co-owners of the condominium cable. And I was scratching my head. I said, what is this? This thing is not even landing in China. Why are they putting money into it? The answer is now clear. The Chinese have already built a cable to Nueang, the cable station, from Kunming. And as soon as this connection is wired up, it's connected, and Kunming is already connected. AAE1 is the same, and in fact, in AAE1, there are currently no plans to connect Myanmar at all. I don't think this is politically incorrect, but there are those who say that Myanmar is becoming the west coast of China. I think it'll be good for China. In my opinion, I think it'll be good for Myanmar. I think it'll be good for all of us. If Myanmar assumes its natural role as the connector, and through that connection, it continues to grow. So I'm going to show you a few pictures. Of the 10 fastest growing economies in 2016, 4 are littoral states of the Bay of Bengal. Myanmar, Bhutan is a member of BIMSTEC, it's sort of just on the other side, India, and Bangladesh, right? If you include Cambodia and Laos, which are just one step removed from the coast of the Bay of Bengal, you have 6 out of the 10 fastest growing economies in this region. So I think APNIC did the right thing by not moving the conference from this region, because this is the future of the world economy. So that is, you can see there's a lot of regional and global value chains that are running through here. Bangladesh, as everybody knows, is an apparel powerhouse. Thailand is extraordinarily important in value chains. I don't know whether you remember when the floods happened. All kinds of manufacturing processes crashed because key components were being made or being shipped through Thailand. And Sri Lanka, we hope, will become such a logistics hub where if something happens here, the world's value chains will be disrupted. And we will guarantee that it won't happen here, right? Minister Vikramaratne? We will have a very robust logistics economy here. China needs to bypass Malacca and the Lombok-Makassar Straits. That's actually another strait through which the big tankers go. Malacca is actually too narrow for the really big oil tankers. So they go through further across. They want to ensure that all the resources that come into their country come through redundant channels. And they have the resources to invest in infrastructure, as we know. Geopolitical dynamics are driving both Japan and India to become more active. This is to the benefit of our region. So, high growth, more money coming in for connectivity. I think the prospects are looking good for our region. It's, as I say, it's a reconnecting. We were connected once before due to various reasons that I will not get into here. We were disconnected, and we are going to be connected again. Shipping will increase as the economies grow. Myanmar and China work out the modalities. This thing will grow even faster. If India, Bangladesh, and Myanmar sort out the political issues on their borders, again, this will accelerate. Air cargo and air passenger services, the prospects are very good for Sri Lanka becoming an air cargo hub, with our Mattala airport being the most liberalized airport in the entire world, perhaps. Every freedom that can be given, we have given. Data flows will necessarily increase, and we need the connectivity from the fiber optic cables to IPv6, where unfortunately Sri Lanka doesn't seem to be at the forefront, but hopefully we will change that. from all those things. We need to have a coherent strategy to improve our position and become the center point of the Bay of Bengal. This is the ESCAP project. This is the highest priority of the ICT committee of ESCAP, the Asia Pacific Information Superhighway. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. How will this help us? In the end, more undersea cables, more terrestrial cables, more open access will benefit us, but it's a necessary condition, not a sufficient condition. The cable stations and the access to cable stations must be liberalized, or we must allow for more cable stations to be built. The terrestrial cables along the Asian Highway and the Trans-Asia Railway should be open access. That's what we are working on with ESCAP. Retail markets must be competitive. Just because wholesale inputs go down in price doesn't mean that the benefits will flow down to the consumers if the retail markets are not competitive. Data centers must be attracted to our region. It must be attractive for people to put data centers in our region rather than in Taiwan and various other places. And in order to do that, we must provide mesh configured terrestrial and undersea cables, and we need to solve our electricity problems. We must have low-cost, reliable electricity that people can rely on. If we do that, we will be in a good place in one of the fastest growing regions of the world economy. Thank you very much.
Any questions for Rohan? Please approach the microphone.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. It's me, Khalil Azizi from Afghanistan, and I'm a fellow. It's very good seeing your idea. I'll be very short. We have the same kind of thing in Afghanistan with China. We are building the Silk Route, and that's also we are working for the IT and all the telecommunication things that we just saw for the Bay of Bengal. So my question is that, how will we expect that? Because, you know, the economically, politically, and technologically wise, every country is affecting each other. So this Bay of Bengal idea that you're working on, and this Silk Route between China, Afghanistan, and the Middle East countries like Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, and I saw Pakistan was not in that list as well, and we are dependent on Pakistan too much, so we need another route. So how can you help us in this regard? Do you have any proposal or something for that kind of issues or not? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not actually describing an idea. I'm telling you what's happening. I'm describing what is going on. The ESCAP initiative that we've been working with since 2010 is about the entirety of Asia, because in terms of wholesale inputs, we are paying perhaps 6 times what they're paying in Europe for IP transit. So for the solution to be a complete solution, it has to be worldwide. It's solving the problem only for the Bay of Bengal isn't enough. We need to connect to Europe, we need to connect to North America, everything must be connected. So the ESCAP proposal is for the entirety of the Asian continent, terrestrial as well as land. I have been looking at the cables that were built in Afghanistan. We were hoping that you would be the leader, because there's so much cable built in Afghanistan. North-south, east-west, circle, unfortunately not used. Because of the political considerations, they have not been able to light those cables and actually use them. So people ask me about places like Afghanistan and say, you know, will this not be hostage to somebody cutting the cables? But in actual fact, if you have a mesh network, you know that that is immaterial. You just need to figure out what it is. The traffic will still be running. You go fix it, right? So that is the overall picture. The overall picture is not about the Bay of Bengal, but given we have limited time and one must focus on something, I thought I would focus on the Bay of Bengal for this talk. But the larger issue is, of course, you're correct.
Brajesh Jain from ISPAB. Sir, thank you very much for taking up the topic of infrastructure. In the previous round of 2000, all the people who put the infrastructure, they had to sell the network for at 110 the price, Global Crossing and others. Hope this time it will be different. The question remains that once undersea capacity increases, there is a need of capacity within the land also to increase in the countries. Now, infrastructure providers are finding it difficult to put the investment because a lot of values is going away to OTTs. The question is, do you think that it should be some government role to create this infrastructure, or should it be left to only private sector? Now that we have two honorable ministers here, thank you.
Yeah, the government has, we can look at the government's track record in providing telecommunication services. 10-year waiting lists, corruption, mistreatment of customers. We know what the government can do in the telecom sector. And I think the governments have to prioritize the high priority areas, health, children, education, rather than put money into areas where there is available private investment. So what the government should do is to regulate, to create policy certainty. We are not doing that. We are in a situation where the governments are actively creating policy uncertainty. Sad to say, in my own country, I would now need a roadmap to figure out what the tax rates are. They change every few days, in fact, right? This is not an environment for investment. So if the government does its job, fiscally responsible, giving policy certainty, the private sector will do its job. That's what we have seen. And it is redundancy is being coming from private investment. And I think we can do that. Now, there's an additional point that I didn't get to because time was limited, which is you can have situations where we have plenty of international connectivity, but getting from the cable station to where the people are is going to be even more expensive because it's controlled by a government monopoly. There are countries where this is the case. So we need to break those monopolies. We need to create alternatives within the domestic wholesale markets as well. And as I said, even if you fix all those problems and the input costs go down, the retail costs will not automatically go down unless there's adequate competition and the customer can choose between company A and company B. So those kinds of issues require government intervention. I would propose that the government should focus on those areas rather than getting into providing telecommunication services, wholesale or retail by itself.
Thank you very much. My name is Bhaskar Bhattacharjee. I came from Bangladesh and I am the APNIC fellow. I stand up here to remind you, internet community, whatever you are talking about the standard IPv6 or connectivity, do you recall the 1 billion people with disabilities who are the most vulnerable and disadvantaged for the accessing internet? Do you remember 60.5 million people in this region, in Asia Pacific region, who have some kind of disabilities? And internet connectivity can change their life. And I am the example. You can see I am the blind person, came here because of the technology. So technology can change the life of people with disabilities. Whenever you are thinking any standard for internet connectivity or whatever, you must consider the accessibility, inclusion, and universal design. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. In Sri Lanka, the percentage of our population with disabilities is 8.4. In Myanmar, it's 5.7. In Nepal, I'm still trying to figure it out. How do I know these numbers? Because we are working on this issue. We believe that particularly the smartphone is going to be a game changer because it will allow, as I think the minister said, you got internet in our pockets right now. And we've got more computing power in our pockets than I had with my first computer in 1984 or 85. So with this, we can develop assistive technologies. We are working on developing assistive technologies, my organization LIRNEasia, in Nepal as well. From our side, we realize it's an extraordinarily important issue, and we are prioritizing it. APNIC, I'm a stranger, I don't know. I think APNIC would be also thinking about those issues. I think it's very important that it was brought up.
Thanks, Rohan. Please stay here for a little while. That was a very interesting talk, sharing the region's internet connectivity in Bay of Bengal. I'd like to invite our chair of EC, Gaurab Upadhaya, to appreciate Rohan's keynote here. Please. A round of applause to Rohan Samarajiva, please. Thank you. Thank you, Rohan. Okay, we just have one last item for this morning session. We'd like to strengthen our relationship with the local host, Sri Lanka CERT CC, by signing an MOU with them, so we can continue working with them in future as well for the internet development in Colombo and in Sri Lanka and Asia-Pac region. So I'd like to invite our Director General, Paul Wilson, and the CEO of Sri Lanka CERT CC, Mr. Lal Diaz, to sign the MOU, please. Thank you, Mr. Lal, and we will continue working with you in future. Thank you. Now, this is the end of the session.